Sorry.
Yeah, so my next question is, would you still have the same approach to say not speaking to university, but speaking to an audience that's like 95% dudes?
Um, Go. What do you got?
Okay, yeah, what you've been accused of crimes most foul. Um, okay, so I know the clips like the DJ Dustin remix rapist. That's bullshit, right?
Well, it depends on which one you've seen.
The one that I think the lady said she was going to take down because it was so bad.
Oh yeah, I say that I don't want to misquote what I said, but I think it was basically like I think that the things that play into like rape culture are it's men being too aggressive and women being too passive, basically. Were like the two things, but it got edited to just like me saying women are too passive.
Based. Okay. Um, yeah, because I did some reading about this. A couple of studies, mostly like reinforcing each other. Um, if someone, yeah, so if someone came to ask you like, how do we like reduce sexual assaults? You would say men stop being so aggressive and women be less passive.
Yeah, I would say men need to look for like we need to have a good conversation about what enthusiastic consent looks like.
Hmm.
And then women need to have like the ability to say no and to have like some level of autonomy over themselves. Like you need to be able to put up a boundary. You need to not be such a people pleaser all the time. You need to learn how to say no.
Hmm. Do you do you think those onuses are equal, or do you not look at it that way?
Percentage wise, I mean, like I think 90% of rape can probably be stopped on either side if either side pushed 100%. But
Yeah.
realistically, we're gonna probably have to meet in the middle somewhere. Like I think like if you went like hardcore on the woman's side, like carry a pocket knife, all this shit. Like I think you could probably stop like 99% of rape, just like make women like murderers. And
Yeah.
then on the guy side, if you just like super respectful, you could probably also stop like 99% of rape. But there's still gonna be like somebody got too drunk and felt differently afterwards or some shit. But in general, I think the solution kind of has to be like in the middle or whatever.
Do you think to that those two kinds of advice? Do you think men and women are? I'm already going off my script here. Do you think both of those sides are equally receptive to that kind of advice?
Um, Depends on how it's given and who's giving it.
Hmm.
Both of those are going to be like highly multivariate. Like I think you can push. I think you can do like enthusiastic consent where guys are pretty receptive to it, as long as you don't present it in like the most cucked fucking way imaginable, which it often is. And then on the woman's side, like being able to put up like good boundaries and like being able to conduct yourself in a way that like maximize. Like I think you can also do that in a pretty good way too. It just depends, but it can't come off as obviously like victim blamey and um,
Yeah. Do you think the men advice comes better from men and the women advice comes better from women generally?
Generally, yeah, maybe. No, actually, I think actually it probably has more to do with your political side than anything else, actually.
Oh, really?
Now it is because everything is political. Because like progressive men aren't going to give good advice to normal men. I don't think it's going to come off as super cocked. It's going to like be like, yeah, I think it's going to feel like super cocked.
I think I agree with that.
And
Yeah.
then like, yeah, but conservative women can probably give good advice to like right-leaning men that are looking to fuck or whatever and not be too cocked about it. It's going to depend, I think, on the political affiliation.
Okay. What else was I gonna? Oh, so it feels like yeah. So the like two of the main things there are. I was reading the study that spoke about different approaches that they try in universities. I feel like most of the research on this stuff is like best coming from those areas because it's almost like a controlled environment. Like you can control what people are learning or what kind of posters are going around the place or what kind of like advice is being given at seminars and shit like that. So and also it's just like it's like when people are quite young and everyone's horny and shit. So I
Mhm.
feel like the first thing there was like it feels like there are three approaches. One is like you treat men as potential rapists, teach them about like consent, aggression, defensive,ness and all that shit. Um, the other one is you treat women as potential victims, where you say like, well, here's what you have to do. You've got to like assert boundaries. Here are some red flag systems you can develop. Here's how to defend yourself if things do escalate. Here's what to notice to avoid things getting to a position where it's too late. Um, do you ever? Because I don't watch much of your content on this topic. The third approach that I don't hear much of is like treating men and maybe even some women as like not potential perpetrators, but potential allies. So, like, how to, I guess, if you're in the UK, that's a lot of like bar and club culture. So, it's like how to friend groups make sure that everyone's going to get home safe, how to like behave when you're out, or maybe if you see some like someone getting fucking harassed on the dance floor or whatever, like that kind of shit. Does that ever come up when you have those discussions?
Not as much. I usually encourage people to like look to friends. So like for women, like giving your phone number and the address you're going to if you're like some guy's house or whatever, like stuff like that. But I don't have much like group dynamic stuff I usually talk about.
Yeah, I'm only going off of like one thing I read here, so it might be completely wrong. It seems to be with the university studies, and this is only one like saying it about itself, is like apparently when they do this in university and they try to do the whole like, well, we'll approach men as potential aggressors, so no means no. Here's how you do consent and shit. Then the second one we talk about like a more, can't remember what the word is, but yeah, the more allyship way of like, here's how what to do if your friends maybe getting harassed or don't walk home like this way, make sure everyone gets a safe way home and shit. And then the third one about teaching women about basically defensiveness.
It
And
feels like
hmm?
I understand those approaches, especially in a university setting, but I guess in the context of what I'm on, the internet and like the Me Too's that I read, it feels like the vast majority of these issues are coming from an inability to accurately sort through interpersonal struggles or interpersonal dynamics. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I've read very many like Me Too's where it's like, oh, like this guy, he picked me up from the club and I didn't tell my friends and then things got weird or whatever. It seems like it's more like, oh, like I trusted this guy too much. I got into a position where I was uncomfortable saying no, and now like this is my story.
Yeah, that's not really too surprising. It turns out actually, I don't know if, again, I'm only going off like very limited research, but like I'll stop saying that. Fuck, you guys know. Okay, shit. Was one of them it was basically saying that the by far like the one that produced the best results was teaching women boundaries and how to defend yourself and how to avoid getting in situations. Um but also it wasn't just that, like it wasn't just as simple as giving out brochures or even doing a couple of courses, because when they did courses it turned out that a lot of the benefits were only like they went away after a couple of months. It had to be
Right.
like the one study that showed like quite a positive effect was like 4 3-hour sessions, like multi like varied, so like defensive stuff, red flag stuff, how to talking about like social advice, and then just like positive sexuality and like safe sex and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So it does make you think, like if you were in charge of like an environment like a university, it's like and you had to choose between the three approaches, you would probably, to get the best results, like hypothetically choose the one for women asserting boundaries because it seems to have the best results. Um,
Yeah, maybe I think the broad like hookup dynamic that I kind of look to that exists today is that like women are basically in charge of pumping the brakes and men are kind of in charge of like hitting the gas.
hmm,
So and like both sides technically want the man to hit the gas because ultimately like both sides are looking to hook up, but like the harm is only going to come if the woman doesn't know when to push the brakes or if the guy is going to operate the gas and the brakes. And I find that the more conversations I have, it seems to me like that's like the expectation is that the guy is in charge of everything. That the guy is going to be in charge of when to speed up, the guy's going to be in charge of when to slow down. That if anything goes wrong, like the guy's like, and I think that level of responsibility, like I've said this a million times, like most men are fucking retarded. Like that's like a recipe for disaster. It's never going to be a good setup. I don't think.
yeah. So hypothetically, I guess if it were the case that teaching women assertiveness is like the most effective way to reduce assaults, regardless of how shitty that is, like placing the onus, you would probably still like say that should be the one that's pushed more if it has the best results.
Yeah, of course. And then
Okay.
obviously there has to be the conversation on the male side too, where it's like, okay, well, like this is probably we can do better in terms of like how our hookup and dating culture looks, right?
Yeah, so my next question is, if that would you still have the same approach? Not if you weren't to say not speaking to university, but speaking to an audience that's like 95% dudes.
Um, if I was just giving advice like on my audience, like I think the vast majority of that advice is probably going to come on the guy side because it's 95%,
So
right?
I'm gonna assume that because I haven't seen much of this content, is like, um, how I don't know, but you can tell me, how proportionate would you say you are when it comes to that advice? Because obviously, if you go by Twitter and what's viral, it's like you're always talking about what women should do, right? But I'm guessing
Mhm.
is it not
I
the
mean,
case?
like,
Or
I feel like when we do, I feel like when we do like the, I'm trying to think of a more optically friendly thing than rape review. But when we do a lot of the rape reviews, I feel like there's a lot of times where I'm saying like, don't do this is creepy, or like if a girl says no, don't do this or whatever. But I think because so much of it is written from the woman's perspective, and that's where we see kind of like all the mistakes being made and all the
Mhm.
accusations being dropped. Probably it ends up being more slanted towards like Like, I don't know why she did this particular thing, or like if you're a girl, like you probably shouldn't do this. Like this is like going to get you into trouble, et cetera, et cetera. Um,
Whereas,
and then I'm also arguing on the other side too, where I'm fighting against a lot of progressives who are saying that like, oh, like women can't do anything, and so then I'm also encouraged to get more advice on the side. Well, no, there's a lot of things that women could do. So it wouldn't surprise me like if in the totality of all my shit, like more of the advice is geared towards women, even though I have a predominantly male audience, just because of like who I end up responding to so much.
yeah, because I feel like again, just from like stuff that I've seen, it kind of sounds like when you're having those discussions about like women's boundaries, I think a lot of the analogies, it almost sounds like fuck, what's the word, like a woman who maybe puts herself in unsafe situations. It sounds like a kind of like poking the bear thing, right? Like it's not your fault morally if you get hurt, but like there are things you can do to reduce the harm. But I guess like the difference is that men are obviously like not bears, so you get like a lot more, like you can actually control the behavior of men.
A
Um,
little bit, yeah.
yeah,
I
I
find
do.
that I brought this up yesterday. I think one of the things that hurts these conversations so much is we use the same word for moral responsibility that we do for like just kind of like personal accountability. We don't have different words there in English for those. And so there's a lot of confusion that happens where it's like you are responsible for locking your car door.
Mhm.
However, you're not morally responsible if somebody breaks in and steals your shit. You know, and it's the same with women. You are responsible for keeping your body safe, but you're not morally responsible if anybody rapes you, you know? But we use that word responsibility or accountability to like mean the same thing, and that muddies a lot of the discourse. So then you get like half of these panels and conversations will end up being like, so if the woman didn't do this, is it her fault? Well, I mean, it's her fault that she maybe didn't do something to protect herself more, but it's not her fault at all that she got raped. They're like those two events or those two like categories are fundamentally different types of things. You know, there's not like a moral accounting there for what another agent did, like a person that could have chosen otherwise to do something. You know.
Yeah, like there's no word choice I think in the English language that helps you get around that because they all have like responsibility, accountability, and fault can all mean moral, right? Like all of them can mean that,
Potentially, yeah,
yeah.
exactly, yeah.
And I
So you
don't,
have to draw the distinction
yeah.
with more words, but then people get triggered anyway, and it's kind of fucked.
Yeah, because I think like if you were talking morally, like you can say if there's like a street and it's called like fucking Rape Alley, and a woman goes down there like after work every day at like 2 in the morning, if she gets assaulted, it's still like 0% her fault, right? You could still
Exactly,
say that
yeah.
more, yeah, yeah. And that's kind of where things get a bit lost. But and then yeah, like the victim blame shit. Hmm. So you never really get into that middle approach of like treating men as potential allies and like how to like I think one thing that gets missing in this discussion a lot, and I think the Scottish government actually did a thing where they tried to cover it, was they had this program called That Guy, which was like don't be that guy, you know, like, and it was just all these like bit like they have all these little like videos or
Mm.
little like hint sheets of like how not to be that guy when you're watching a streamer, how not to be that guy at the gym. But then another big thing was like a lot of it was focused on men being able to call each other out and how to do that.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
there was that. Maybe in Scotland it would work, but I remember there was that Gillette commercial that I
mm.
feel like any normal person would watch it and be like, "Oh, okay, yeah." But like fucking conservatives saw it and lost their fucking mind, and like half the internet was like, "Why are you saying all men are rapists? Like the black guy stopping the white guy, isn't it? What the
Hmm.
fuck?" Like people lost their fucking mind over it. It's like I don't know how you can get so fucking upset over such a like harmless fucking commercial. So.
And
Uh,
that's that. So that's what you mean about talking to right wingers, right? Because it just like it proves the like I hate using the word patriarchy every time there are right wingers listening, but it's like men are so fucking sensitive. Like they're so
yes, everyone is. Yeah.
even in the that guy thing, there's actually like a whole thing that even they got in trouble for because there was like a it was like how to approach your friend when you think they've crossed a boundary with a woman, right?
Hmm.
And they were like, okay, don't do like a public call out. Don't call, especially not in front of strangers or even in front of all your friends. Like, take them to a quiet place, try to be empathetic and all that. Because most of the time, it's not that they've like done something insanely heinous. Most of the time, it's like they've fucked up. Like they've crossed a boundary that's like bad, but not the end of the world. Yeah, and like how to stop someone from going too far. But even they got
Hmm.
in trouble for that because it was like I think when it comes to sexual assault, a lot of progressives like become just reactionaries, right? They become like, oh no, it has to be like mob justice, fucking cut their dick off and all that shit.
Yeah.
But they got in trouble for that because it was like apparently too capitulating to even though I think that's generally the case. If you saw one of your friends behaving like that, you'd probably want to like intervene in a very kind of like diplomatic way, because again, like otherwise they're going to get defensive, right? They're going to
Turned
try to save
off by
face.
the
Yeah.
message completely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how common do you think? I think I think that's like a really, really common thing. I think most of the time when it comes to friend groups, I don't think men say shit to each other. Would you agree with that, or?
Um, I mean, I don't know, like different. I hear things from red pillars, and either they're lying to make an argument, or my male friendships are just like exceptionally fucking horrible compared to the average. But I personally, I feel like, and I've seen this happen, like I feel like a guy could be completely destroying his fucking life and making the worst decisions ever,
Hmm.
and then like he'll go to talk to his friend group about it, and they'll just be like, "Yo, what's up?" And he'll be like, "Oh, you know, just whatever," and they'll be like, "Okay." And we like don't really say anything about like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this thing. We just gotta like let it happen, and then you laugh about it afterwards. But it might just be that my male friendships are exceptionally fucked. But I feel like that's kind of more the norm for
Hmm.
like male friendships. Whereas for women, they're way more communicative in their relationships about how like, hey, like you're making a big mistake, like don't do this. Um, Damn, you know what would be really interesting is to write a story where you like name things like this, but you don't actually gender the participants, and then you ask them at the end, like, what gender do they sound like? Because
Yeah.
I feel like if I were to explain this, like, you know, like A, it has a big decision coming up. B, C, and D are all really worried about them, and they have a big conversation with them to try to, you know, say like, hey, is this a good decision? Blah 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 blah. I feel like 99% of the time, like those are women, almost always, and for men, it's like we just kind of like sit and watch, you know, the world fall apart. But
Yeah,
you
but
know, I could be wrong, but yeah.
no, I think that's true. But I think the problem is like when I think it's maybe worse than just that. Like, I think it's when men know that their friends have like done something fucked up with a girl, or like in a friend group, or that's usually when you'd know, because otherwise you just wouldn't.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what it is, but I think it's like a fear of like breaking the vibe, or like there's like a fuck, what'd you call it? Like, um, or just feeling like yeah, the fear of like being cucked, I guess, is another thing. Is like looking like that person who has to like call someone out for the way they behaved with a woman, or like breaking the status quo and shit. Um, yeah, like a faux pas. So I do like, it's really annoying because I feel like a lot of the best advice to give to men is really obvious, but like, and that's probably why it's not as interesting to talk to. But yeah, like the fear of being soy, your chat is saying. But
A little
like if
bit.
you, because I think what happens a lot is like, because and I never really coped with this when I was younger as well. If I heard that someone in a friend group I was with was like being a creep to one of the girls, I would just like not speak to him again, because I'm not that socially dependent. But
Hmm.
like, would you ever say, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever had to like call out one of your friends when it comes to if they've done something fucked up with like a girl in the friendship group?
My friends in high school, I think I was the only one that talked to girls in my friend group because it was like me and two other people. Then my friend group now, if I think of like Dan and Mr. Mooten, I don't think any of them have ever done that. I've talked to Darius sometimes because his stuff gets a little bit weird, but he's not like a friend. I just don't think I have those types of friend groups much, unfortunately.
I guess it's
So I
hard
don't
for you
have
to
much
do it.
experience with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why is everyone in chat saying Darius? I read something about it on the subreddit, but I don't know
Yeah,
what the
that's subreddit
details
post.
are.
So that's he's like the fucking hot button topic of the week or whatever.
Okay, what's happened there?
But he takes there are certain jokes that he takes really really far, and people are never sure if they're jokes or not. And then he did something yesterday where he kind of like made a meme out of some history that him and Melina have, and Melina was not in on that joke, whereas a lot of the girls that he kind of jokes about are in on it. So Melina was like, "Hey, I don't appreciate that," and now, but now people are gonna probably think that everything he says about women is not a joke. So it's just a weird. He plays a very wacky character.
It's also, that's like a really difficult thing to deal with online as well, because again, like the public call out can just like have so much more of a damaging effect than it's supposed to, you know, like it can
Mhm.
make things worse. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Have you there's a ContraPoints video where she spoke about that. She spoke about how she wanted, there was someone she could like me too, but she doesn't want to because she doesn't trust like the mob to be
Oh
to deliver
shit! Who do you
justice.
think? Who do you think that is?
I'm not telling you. But
Wait, are
anyway,
you familiar with all the? Are you up on all the memes with that shit?
I know the memes. Yeah, the
Oh,
memes that
okay.
are
Never mind.
memes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. But
Yeah. What
fuck.
were you saying?
No, um fuck, I had a few things to say. When you, I think something that maybe when it comes to, I think there's a temptation for especially women when they hear the advice that you might give when it coming from a guy is either
Hmm.
like we already know, or um But I think that what that study that I read also said that, you know, like that 20-25% sexual assault rate at universities for women,
Hmm.
like the bulk of it happens. The reason that number is so high is mostly pushed up by what happens in the first and second year, which does suggest that women, once they get to like second or third year university or third, fourth
They
year,
know
they
better.
start
Yeah.
learning better. Yeah. I feel like, so say if you have like a dating experience, because I've had a few of these where
You rape somebody?
no, um, but like
Sorry.
when women do like when they do things that are like, I feel like if you were doing this as a general rule, you'd be pretty unsafe. You know, the kind of person who like wants to like come over to your flat like the first night, right? Or like after
Hmm.
like even if it's quite late and it's like, well, I don't know, maybe we should like meet outdoors first and like at least like can like get like a vibe, and then they're like, okay, well, we'll just meet in this like car park outside this fucking shopping center that's closed at 8 at like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
fucking hell,
yeah.
like
They
you're
still
taking
do
a
a lot of.
yeah, you're taking a lot
Mhm.
of chances here and shit. Yeah. um but like, does a guy have like, would you say the guy has like no responsibility to like step in there, because it feels like you're on the other end, it feels like you're giving advice to someone who just wants to live kind of freely, right?
Um. Well, wait. Step in and take responsibility where?
Like if you're having like a dating situation with someone who is doing things that if she did it like 100 times, she'd probably get assaulted, right? Like,
What would you say? Like, well, I'm not going to meet you at a principal.
yeah, I don't know. Like,
Oh, I've told some girls that I should kill you at a principal. It's kind of the same thing. But yeah, because there are a lot of girls who would do things where it's like, bro, like you really want to fly out and like hang out with me and like be trapped in my fucking house for like a weekend? Like you could get fucking killed. But I mean, like, I don't think I'm gonna kill anybody, so I don't care. But like, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I
because
usually say like in the future, like especially with fucking streamers, because like half of us are actually fucking rapists. Like, I don't think you should do this, but
mhm.
it seems like they don't give a fuck. So it's like, okay, well, good
Yeah,
luck.
because because it feels like it's kind of patronizing, like giving advice to someone like that, especially if they're the one who suggested, like, well, if they're suggesting, well, I'll just come to your flat because it's like close, and they're like, okay,
Hmm.
fine. And then I'm like, if I give advice, it's like, what? That's so many things. That's like white knight. That's like, I'm afraid of myself. That might even sound like, because like, as a demographic, as a man. Um, but that makes me wonder, because let's say I think a lot of what you're saying about women and boundaries is probably, at least according to research, is probably true. It seems to be
So,
the best thing to do, like harm reduction and shit. Um, how valuable do you think the advice is coming from a man?
um, I don't know. I mean, like I've had like two women email me and they're like, oh, like I kept this in mind or whatever. I've had a couple guys email me and say that some stuff I've said has like helped them not be like creepy or weird. But I mean, like at the end of the day, my audience is not like a super sexually active one. I think it's like fucking
No.
45 or like 50%. I think of my audience like polled as virgins when I when I polled on it. So it's not like
Bro.
I've got a bunch of slayers out here or anything. So I think the main thing that I just like to push back against is I see it happen again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Is this idea that like women can't do anything? If a guy's gonna
Mm,
rape you, there's nothing you can do. Women are helpless to stop these things from happening. And I understand that like people are motivated to say these things because they want to avoid like rape culture or like being like a rape
mm,
apologist. But it ends up being so disempowering, and more importantly, I don't even give a fuck disempowering. The problem is it's bad advice and it's not true. And I think I'm worried. I wonder sometimes how much that plays into freezing responses where like a woman, you know, hears enough that like if you tell a guy no, he's gonna fucking kill you.
yep.
And so like she gets into a situation and she's like, fuck, like this guy's pushing for something, but like I wonder if I say no if he's gonna do something violent. And it's like, no, most of the time he's not. Most of the time he's gonna fuck off like a little pussy bitch. Because most guys are just relying on you being a pussy bitch. Um so yeah, I don't know. That's I just wish people would stop saying that, giving advice like, oh no, like you can't do anything. Like a guy who's gonna rape you is gonna rape you. That was why that whole thing blew up with that one girl who was like, I said no and the guy just raped me harder. And it's like, okay, but that's not normal. That's like very, very, very rare that somebody's gonna go that hard, you know?
Yeah. That's also because yeah, it's true. Like statistically, you're more likely to get out of the situation if you fight back. I guess
Yeah.
the problem is that like those situations are very nuanced, and if you are like especially on a first date in someone else's house and shit like that, then it's harder to make that judgment, I guess, because maybe like there are probably definitely times where in that specific situation, if you fight, you're gonna die, right? Which is probably
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
gonna be exceptional. And
yeah.
in those situations, like you're fucked anyway. Like you might as well go out fighting, you know? Like if you found a guy that's willing to fucking kill you over a sexual interaction, you are in an exceptionally rare circumstance.
Hmm. Um, when you talk about how men are retarded and they don't know anything about boundaries or like fucking communication and shit like that, um, sometimes I get the feeling, and I know this upsets quite a few women. I think we're just in one of those times in life where you just have to communicate absolutely everything.
Hmm.
Do you think that's generally good advice?
To communicate everything.
Yeah. I think we're in a
Um,
situation now where that's like the best we can do just because of the gender dynamics, you know?
I mean, if you could if you want to. You don't have to. Like, really, it's just like don't be like a selfish prick. If you're just not
Mm.
selfish and you kind of like keep in mind like what do I think the other person wants or how are they acting, or whatever, and then you can figure out most sexual situations. But the problem is people in general are selfish, especially men when they're horny are really just thinking about like busting a nut, and then you don't really think about, you're not very considerate about what's going on with the other person, and then I think that's where a lot of the kind of weird, uncomfortable, misinterpreted situations happen.
Yeah. Someone in chat's asking, why does that upset women? Well, it upsets women because there are some women out there who like to do this thing where they'll start kissing you and then they'll back off and walk away because they want you to follow them, right? And they'll tell you that afterwards. I'm like, fuck,
Sure.
I'm
Although I
too
think those
autistic to make this
situations are,
decision. Like, yeah.
yeah, those are kind of rare. I think it's just more common that like women won't push the gas at all and they expect men to kind of lead on everything. I think
Hmm.
that's a little bit more common. And then that can just get frustrating because you're not sure sometimes um, how much we're supposed to be pushing the gas, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. I think that's maybe like the main I feel like when when you make I think you mentioned it earlier, like it sounds like what we say about something like trying to avoid the rape culture thing by with uh fuck, why did that come up? Men trying to avoid the rape culture.
Wait, which part or
I
what?
don't remember, but okay, like there was a time when I was talking to, it was a panel and there were I think there were a bunch of like there were a couple of orbiters in there, like DGGers. And I remember I said this, it was such a weird experience. I said this thing about the panel was about whether it's okay to wank to the thought of your friends without telling them.
Oh,
I was like,
base.
and one of the things that came up was like this, I mentioned this really creepy thing that a lot of men will do is they will just hopelessly drag their heels being friends with a woman because they're like in love with them and they think if they're eventually it'll be their turn, right? And then
No.
immediately the panel all like in fucking unison jumped at, oh, but what about the women who take advantage of that situation and they're emotionally abusing the guy? And if I was like, what the fuck happened here? And then apparently it feels like they might have got that from you.
Possibly, yeah, with the whole like friend zoning thing, yeah, which I think happens, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, the only issue that I had with that thing, um, I'm not gonna be able to. The only issue that I had with that, the issue that I have with like the friend zone thing is that like for friend zoning, the responsibility seems to fall on the man to figure out when the woman is not interested, and then
Mm.
for like like I did this like friend zoning in my opinion is like emotional rape. I gave this take and people got really mad, and the comparison that I was trying to make basically is just that like when you friend zone somebody, basically what you're doing is you're taking advantage of somebody hardcore in a way that they probably wouldn't consent to. If the guy knew there's no chance of a relationship, he probably wouldn't pursue as much like simpery or whatever the
Yeah.
fuck with a particular girl if he knew. And the girl should have some understanding of that, but they don't, and they don't care. But then the onus falls on the guy. People will make fun of the guy for it, like, what a fucking loser, you got friend zone, like you should know, blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay, well, like, but when it comes to rape, like now the guy is supposed to be in control of all of his stuff, understand what the woman wants. Same thing with the friend zone thing too, though. Even when the woman's getting what she wants in the friend zone thing and she's got the leverage, the guy's still supposed to have like the wherewithal to know when to stop and everything. And it's like it just feels like in every situation, like all the responsibility falls on the men all the time to figure everything out. And it's like we can do that, I guess, if you want. I don't mind doing it. I think I navigate those situations exceptionally well, but I don't think it's reasonable for everybody to. And I think you're putting yourself in a situation where, okay, well, people are just going to get raped then, because like that's the culture essentially that you're setting up. Is that men have to figure out everything from both sides all the time, and it's a situation where the only party that can really get harmed, like you're not getting like physically harmed in a friend zoning thing, and in rape situations, it's always going to be the woman that's getting harmed. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems silly to me, but.
Yeah, I think it's because you mentioned a situation where I guess the guy hasn't said anything to the woman and she hasn't said anything back to him. So I think in those situations, the problem is just that people are a lot worse at mind reading than I think we might think they are. There can probably be a situation that lasts for years where the guy thinks he's going to get something out of this friendship more than like being more than just friends, and the woman
Mhm.
just thinks this guy's just my friend, and that can go on for years. But I think what
Theoretically.
happens more often is the guy does express some interest. The woman says no, we're just friends. Um, they stay friends, but then every now and then the guy gets like very obviously jealous when he's like when she's like speaking to another guy, or like there's just like hints get dropped. But then the woman maybe
Mhm.
doesn't want to lose a friend, and she's just like, oh wait, no, this is definitely fine. You know, they're just
Yeah, where the woman should be like, you need to cut this guy off. Like, come on.
yeah, yeah. But then that's where I wonder, like, if let's say your audience, 95%, is it 95%? I'd imagine it's about that, right? Guys,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably, yeah. Or 92%.
So I feel like the yeah, if that's ever going to happen in either of our audiences, probably it's going to be the guy, isn't it?
To cut that off, I mean, unless the woman is going to be like really, really, really cool, yeah. It's probably going to be the guy that has to realize like, okay, like I'm wasting my life on this. It's not good.
Yeah. I think that's maybe just what happens because when I brought that up in that panel, and then it was immediately just what about the woman doing whatever emotional, I think emotional abuse is probably a better word, but yeah, I think it sometimes sounds like when you get these, I don't really know if this is your fault, but like when this other side thing comes in, it just becomes like such a good weapon for like misogynists to just deflect, right? Like,
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
yeah. Do you ever feel like you have any control over that, or?
I mean, all I can do is try to speak to both sides as much as I can, I guess, and try to be concise as possible in that. But yeah.
And you said you had emails from what, both like women saying that you helped assert boundaries and men saying that you helped not be
Yeah,
more
but
mindful about it.
not too many. I don't have very many sexually active people in my audience, I think. But I do get them occasionally. Yeah.
Can I pull your chat?
Well, yeah, go for it. I guess.
So I want to see a one in chat if you're a woman and listening to Dustin has helped you assert your boundaries better.
This is gonna be troll as fuck. You can try to run a formal poll, but like,
I know there's going to be a bunch of, okay, it doesn't matter. It's fine. The second one I was going to ask was if you're a man and listening has helped you be more mindful of women's boundaries. I would imagine there'd have been more twos, but yeah, that's okay. Don't worry about it.